Representative Ro Khanna is a Democratic congressman from California. He's one of 6 congressmen that refuse to take PAC money. So, without question, one of the best right off the bat. He's one of 6 people that pass the basic litmus test for being an honest politician. Think about how sad that is given how many congressmen and congresswomen there are. So he sat down with Nomiki Konst of TYT to discuss foreign policy. Let's see what he had to say.
You know, one of the cases I came out with Syria just categorically opposed to those strikes for strategic reasons, not to speak about, well, they should have come to the Congress for an up or down vote. Of course they should have come to the Congress for an up or down vote. But beyond the constitutional question, what do you think substantively? My view is we ought to actually be quoting some of our founders, or John Quincy Adams, who was the Secretary of State under Monroe. He has this famous passage where he says, well, America shouldn't go out to seek monsters to destroy. And really what we ought to do is lend our voice and our credibility to human rights, but not militarily go and intervene. Because he says we can't ever figure out who the good guys are. I mean, it's much more eloquently written. But here was his vision, which he understood that if we did that, if we went in and intervened militarily, we'd actually be seen not as a liberator, but as possibly using dictatorial force. And he warned about this. Agitator. So we've got to say, look, we're not soft on defense. We're not weak by saying that we ought not to be intervening. Look at what we did. We intervened in Iraq. That created the situation in part in ISIS because of in Syria. We've intervened in Afghanistan. Well, 40% of Afghanistan is still under Taliban control. How have we improved that situation? So we're not picking often the right side. What we ought to be doing is saying, look, Assad has committed atrocities. There's no question. Forgetting just the chemical weapons. I mean, 4 million Sunnis have been displaced. It's been systematic displacement. His father, in the 1982 massacre, killed a lot of folks. I mean, these aren't good folks, but let's call for an international tribunal. Let's call for human rights prosecution. Let's, as Quincy Adams would say, lend our voices to the moral cause, but not intervene militarily, which makes matters worse. I think we can be strong, principled, without being militaristic. And frankly, I think that I wish more Democrats would speak to the substance of a progressive foreign policy instead of being, there's this fear that, oh, we'll be projected as weak on national security. Do they understand all the connections? Do they understand that it was our disbanding of the Saddam Ba'athist regime that led to ISIS, that it was in part our call for regime change in the late 2011 that made Syria even more of an attractive magnet for rebel groups, that the chemical weapons, as despicable as they were, struck Al-Qaeda, so it's not clear who the good guys even are in the region, and that there's been, on the Assad regime, really 4 million displacement of Sunnis. I mean, this has been a systemic policy that's horrific, but the response to it militarily, just having 59 missiles with an American label. I mean, here's what I don't get with our policymakers. I mean, do they stop to think about the story the Syrians are going to tell their kids? Right. They're not going to say America intervened because they wanted to put an end to chemical weapons, even if that may be the case. They're going to say there were 59 missiles that landed in your country with an American label. And we continue to not think about how the world tells the story about us. And it's surprising because politicians are so aware of their narrative usually about how they're perceived by others. Well, we need to be sensitive to what we're doing to perpetuate other generation of hate, and how that's not in the United States' strategic interest.
Would you look at that? A politician making a robust affirmative argument for non-intervention. Man, is that refreshing to hear. Because for so long, we've just gotten used to the Republican Party just being taken over by the neocons. So they never met an intervention they didn't like. They openly defend torture and extrajudicial prisons. We have 800 military bases around the world right now. People like Lindsey Graham would probably like to expand that. I mean, you have a party that is openly in favor of empire and openly in favor of not only interventions, but outright wars and ground invasions everywhere. That's the Republicans. What does the Democratic Party typically say nowadays? Well, I mean, we're not crazy. We're not like those crazy neocons. They're bad, and they love war and whatnot. We're more reasonable, and we don't like ground invasions per se. But maybe every now and then we do a ground invasion. But the most important thing is what we should do is a lot of drone strikes, like everywhere. We should drone in Pakistan, Yemen, and Somalia. We should maybe do some airstrikes in Syria. No boots on the ground, but like airstrikes in Syria. And we should keep a few thousand troops in Iraq and keep a few thousand in Afghanistan. But aren't I so progressive? Please pat me on the back and tell me how great I am when the Republicans come out in favor of hard imperialism and we're in favor of soft imperialism. No, I'm not going to pat you on the back. I mean, Obama did 7 different interventions. This is a guy who, portrayed himself as the candidate of peace. That's not peace. And lest you think it's not really an act of war when we drone Pakistan or Yemen or Somalia, imagine China decided to take out a KKK enclave in Arkansas, and they did a couple drone strikes, and maybe took out 3 or 4 civilians in the process of doing those drone strikes. How would our government react? Would Donald Trump say, it's cool, don't worry, it's not actually an act of war? They were just doing some targeted strikes on a terrorist, stronghold. That's it. That's all that was. No, well, that was an act of war. You're fucking violating our national sovereignty, our airspace, waging an attack on our soil. The fuck is this? So, yeah, it is a war. Okay, you're doing drone strikes and not doing a ground invasion, but yeah, you're at war in 7 different countries. It's so bad that sometimes I forget what all of them are. Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Pakistan, Yemen, Somalia, Syria. There you go, 7. Well, finally we have a Democrat coming out and saying, yeah, how about, because this is what happened with the recent Syria bombings that Trump did when he attacked the Syrian government. Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer were just flat out for it. Oh, God. But many Democrats came out and they said, well, even Bernie Sanders did this, which is sad. He said, well, Mr. President, maybe on the substance it's a good idea, but you got to come to Congress first to get approval. Oh, what a fucking weak, mealy-mouthed dodge that is. So in other words, I don't necessarily disagree with you waging an attack on the Syrian government, opening up a new front in a war, but you have to come ask us first. No, here's how you respond to that. Of course, not only do you have to come and get approval from us, because that's what the Constitution dictates, but I'm also against it, and I'm going to vote no, and here's why I'm going to vote no. As bad as a guy as Assad is, the rebels now are majority Islamists and jihadists, ISIS and Al-Qaeda-affiliated groups. This is what you do, this is what you say, but the Democrats don't say that because that's not what they believe. They're not in favor of non-intervention. Look, if you really are naive enough to believe that the U.S. is doing everything we're doing because we're the world police and we care about human rights and we care about altruism and we care about justice and we got to look out for people, why is it where one of our top allies is Saudi Arabia, an official Wahhabi state? They have the same ideology as ISIS. They declare that all atheists are terrorists. They behead people in the public square for sorcery and witchcraft and apostasy and drug smuggling. They cover women up from head to toe. They don't let them drive. They don't have equal rights. So this is an ultra-conservative terror state that's massacring kids in Yemen right now. We're going to say we care about human rights and we got to protect people, and then in the next breath, arm and back and help Saudi Arabia with their bombing campaign in Yemen and their blockade, which is starving 17 million people. We don't care about human rights. That's not what it's about. We back Israel, too, as they do apartheid and they do oppression and they keep stealing more and more Palestinian land in brazen violation of international law. We don't care about that. So what is it really about? It's really about, of course, the military-industrial complex has a big part of it. Because there are, I don't know if you guys know this, there are military parts made in every state in the country. It's a brilliant trick done by the military-industrial complex, so you get basically consensus among Democrats and Republicans, where they go, okay, look, sure, I am maybe against war, or at least I will use that rhetoric on the campaign trail, but are they going to vote to shut down the plant in their town that makes a part for a tank? They're not going to do that, are they? So we keep pumping out weapons, helicopters, planes. We sell these things all around the world. We have obviously overstock here. We got a bunch of tanks sitting in the Nevada desert. And you got all this stuff sitting around. What are you going to do? Well, we should be the world police, and we should go everywhere, and we should use this, and we need to... Our welfare in this country is warfare. That's what it is. So such a giant part of our economy is war, so now it's an integral part of the economy. So now we feel, oh, we have to be the world police, because what are we going to do? Shut down all these plants? Spiral us into a recession? Have to get off of this kind of an economy, a warfare economy, and move towards a green technology, a green economy, a renewable energy economy? They think that's too hard, that's too much work, there's too much, too much of a realignment would have to go into that, and we have to change our priorities and change the way everything is structured, so let's just keep going down this path, keep selling death and destruction around the world by selling weapons to hideous regimes, keep getting involved ourselves too much around the world. Look, we need drastic change. And step number one in that change is having Democrats that are willing to stand up and say, no, we have 800 military bases around the world. Let's at least cut that in half. Over 50%, 54% of our discretionary budget is military spending. And they have the nerve to tell us we can't do, healthcare for everybody or free college. You can if you take some of that money, if you chop down the military budget and put some of that money where it should go. So the first step is Democrats to say no more. No more military-industrial complex, no more interventions everywhere, no more 800 military bases. There's a principled argument for non-intervention. By the way, that doesn't mean if there's a genocide going on somewhere, you do nothing. No, you get together with the international community and you go together to come to some sort of a solution. You don't have unilateral force, because unilateral force is a corrupting thing where we have all these other reasons for getting involved and pretending like we care about human rights and like we're the protectors of peace around the world, when polls show people around the world view the U.S. as the number one threat to peace. Not the keeper of peace, the number one threat to peace. Because we wage offensive wars against countries that didn't attack us. We violated international law left and right. We're doing 7 interventions right now. We torture a well-known, disgusting torture, a worldwide torture regime. So Rokon is 100% right. We need more Democrats making this argument. We're done with the militarism, with being the only empire in the world. We got to unwind, and we got to get back to a reasonable budget where we spend on things that other modern nations spend on and file it in the duh category. Healthcare, duh. College, duh. Infrastructure, duh. Like, what are we doing here? So thank you, Representative Rokana, for making an affirmative action when very few other Democrats dare to speak up on this. You get more straight talk rhetoric from Rand Paul on this issue than you do from your run-of-the-mill Democrat in Congress or Senate, and that's very, very sad.